All right, the following presentation contains the following themes: colonialism, feminized violence, and spirituality. At this time, I will be passing over our presentation to Odemi Pessu. She will be talking to us on the Force of Nature book that she's just published. So very, very exciting news. Odemi, over to you.
Thank you. Wait, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I mean, it hasn't even been a year since I've been at Coupa, but it really feels like so long because I've been so welcomed in this community. So I really appreciate this opportunity. And just a quick question for you, Felicity. Will you be okay moving the slides?
Yep, I got you.
Great. So today's talk is about honoring divine feminine power, and just a little bit of background before I go more into detail. I published my book, Force of Nature, during the pandemic. I'd say, last May, June, around that time. And it gave me a lot of time to really take a lot of my academic background and a lot of my own spiritual beliefs, as well as the indigenous beliefs of my family. And it gave me an opportunity to pour that into this passion project that has really just changed how I view the world and how I view the power of literature and creativity to enact positive change. So that was really the premise of me writing this book, and going from studying econ to writing poetry to working here at Coupa has just been like an amazing journey, and it has helped me realize that everything we do can be a vessel through which love can flow. So that is really the main idea of this talk, and we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so as I said, honoring divine feminine power, and what that means. So in the next slide, I will be talking about where I am from. So my name is Odemi Pessu, and it is a Nigerian name. Specifically, it's an Ishikiri name because I am Nigerian. I'm Ishikiri and Ija, and these are two ethnic groups that are situated on the south part of Nigeria in this very coastal region. And that is where all of the oil in Nigeria is concentrated. And historically speaking, even though we gained independence in 1960, there has been intense ethnic conflict in the area, mostly because there's a lot of contention around who has ownership to the natural resources that contribute to Nigeria's GDP. And in the last few decades, we've seen a lot of high maternal mortality rates in the region. And we've seen a lot of infighting, and we've seen a lot of deaths with children and young children being affected by the fighting that takes place in the region. However, on the flip side, it is a beautiful area rich with culture, and we just crowned a new king, I want to say, a few months ago. And that was a very big deal because the subject of indigenous leadership in post-colonial countries in Africa is something that is an ongoing conversation about how we can better honor our indigenous systems and who we were pre-colonialism. So we can go to the next slide. So my journey here and how this all ties into what I ended up pursuing in my, academic side. Growing up and hearing stories from my mom and hearing her tell me about how, when Shell was drilling for oil, it flooded her brother's farm and he never got compensation, or just hearing, different elements of who was able to access education versus who wasn't. And a lot of times that was decided along gendered lines. I'd say, especially for me being a young woman in my late 20s, it's expected for me to kind of go to school and then get married. And just that concept of having women kind of choose or have to align their decision-making based off of just cultural expectations, that inspired me to go to Brown and study international relations and political economy, and then to pursue my Master of Public Affairs, because I wanted to understand how we can create systems that empower women simply based on them just being a woman. They don't have to necessarily change themselves or change who they are, but kind of leverage their natural and innate strengths. And so during this time, I was able to conduct a lot of really interesting research on post-colonial development and what that looks like, and gender equity and political ecology in Nigeria. But also, I took a deep look at what liberation movements looked like, not only in Africa, but East Asia and Latin America. And I saw these themes where a lot of young people found empowerment by turning back to who they were before. And so I'm deeply inspired by people like Kwame Nkrumah and Steve Biko in particular, because I believe that they kind of showed me that there is power in your voice and there is power in what you write. And this journey has inspired me to use whatever platforms I have to embolden young African and Indigenous women to own their agency through their creativity, through art, through literature, and through everything that we're taught to kind of sell for capitalist gain, but we're not able to really own that power for ourselves. So that really inspired me to write Force of Nature. And the main themes of my book are honoring divine feminine power and finding spiritual liberation through that, and also being able to look at what makes us feel the most vulnerable, our emotions, whether that's love, pain, grief, loss, triumph, finding strength in the complexities of all the emotions that we feel, and not running away from them, but allowing them to kind of guide us towards our highest self. And then lastly, I talk a lot about decolonization of the mind, body, and spirit, and what that looks like. And just a spoiler, I think it means turning back to that divine feminine energy that in this overall patriarchal world, we've been taught to kind of sequester that energy, both in men and women. We are taught to kind of always fight for what we want instead of being someone or being a being who attracts or simply is magnetic enough to attract the good, because we ourselves are good and we are love and light. And so those are really the themes that I explored in my book. And I felt that it was really important to talk about that during this specific time and space, because if we look around and we just see what's going on in the world, I think that there's a lot of similarities between how we, and when I say we, society, companies, corporations, how we treat nature and how we treat the earth and how we treat women. Both are not entities to be captured. Both are not beings to control. It's kind of like Pocahontas, you can't just go around owning people. You can't go around owning women. You can't go around owning the earth. And so I think I really, really wanted to kind of create something that could encourage everyone who reads this to think a little bit differently about our independent relationships with the world around us, and then kind of look at the parallels between how we view nature and how we view the women around us. So we can go to the next slide. So the big question, what is divine feminine energy and how can we channel it? So this is something that I feel, or at least this question is something that comes up a lot, because I think a lot of people think that divine feminine energy is something that you have to be a woman to access it. But the thing is, yin and yang exists in all of us, and yin is that feminine essence, and yang is that masculine essence. And this is what makes up the world. This is what makes up who we are. And there is often a pull and a take and a push and a pull, I think. And so how I kind of interpret divine feminine energy for myself is it's looking at receiving, and it's looking at those elements of being able to give birth to new imaginings of who I can be and who future generations to come can be. And I can do that through my art. I can do that through my love and through my compassion and through my empathy. And then that can flow into not only the work that I do professionally, but it can also flow into my day-to-day interactions with people. So I'd say that overall divine feminine energy is just that essence of love and all that is. And if we want to think about it in spiritual terms, it's kind of that surrender to the flow, that flow of love that surrounds us and that kind of keeps the world going. And I spend a lot of time just sitting outside and looking at trees and looking at the clouds and just kind of like taking in just the natural flow of the earth around me. And I think what it has taught me, especially while writing this book, I spent a lot of time outside writing this book. It's taught me that every single living being in this world has to surrender to that flow. Powerful oaks don't beg the trees around them to help them grow. They just grow because they surrender to that love and that nourishment that they receive from the sun. And I believe that we as human beings, we're not that different from the trees. We're not that different from the ocean. We're not that different from the clouds that we see. It's just that I think we create a lot of mechanisms and dichotomies and practices and rituals that kind of remove us from that flow. And it's kind of like if you have a river and it's supposed to be going towards this oasis at the end, if we come and start putting things in the way and saying, oh no, I can't surrender to this because it doesn't make me a lot of money, or I can't surrender to the flow of love because that's not what I was taught. How will people think about me? Or I don't know, just different things and different ways that we bring in our mind, and we don't spend a lot of time in our body and allowing ourselves to just kind of feel. I think that all ties into divine feminine energy. And I think that the best ways that we can channel it are just allowing love to flow through us. And so in the next slide, I'll be reading a couple of poems from my book, just so you can kind of get where I'm coming from. And just a little bit of background. Rivers Girl is an ode to my identity, because where my mom is from, it's called Rivers State, and it is situated in the Niger Delta. And I remember growing up, whenever I would tell people, also side note, Ishikiri people and Ijaw people have been fighting for years. And so I kind of always thought it was very interesting that I grew up in a household where you have two people from cultures that essentially do not like each other. And I remember I would grow up thinking about this and thinking about the beauty of love and how it can unite people, but also thinking about how being a Rivers Girl, it just kind of means that you have this deep alignment with the sea. And I've always loved being by water. And so that inspired that. And then Force of Nature is the namesake poem. It's at the end of my book. And it was deeply inspired by Ego Trippin', this poem by Nikki Giovanni that I love her. And I just remember growing up and reading that poem and just thinking about, wow, why is it that praising myself or honoring this divinity that exists within me, why is that so looked down upon? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm African? Is it because I'm first gen? And I just remember thinking that, I would go into the world boldly and authentically, but sometimes certain people didn't like that. And so this is for them. This is for those people who don't want to see you be the force of nature that you are. And so I'm gonna read the first poem, Rivers Girl. And just to sound check, everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. So this poem is called Rivers Girl. In times of discontent, I come to the fertile soils of conquered lands, dripping in liquid gold, and I ask, What does it mean for me to call captured pastures home? Can I find freedom as a sailor, conquering seas of my own, and finding solace in the icy opinions of waters who know truth as much as they know lies, bearing witness to abduction, carrying love letters in bottles that will never drown? I find refuge in the lethargic stretches of cobalt waves dancing towards a molten sunset out of reach. Do they abide by the moon's wishes? Or do they meander without direction, in search of bare skin, just something warm at last to offset the winter's cold? I sit here, watching them scurry back and forth, and I marvel at how the movement of the air touches us differently. Indigo ripples become ardent tsunamis, while the hair on my neck stands still. As I feel tender kisses amidst imminent storms, I am at home in the wilderness and relaxed by her chaotic unknown. As temperature changes forebode a setting sun, I can't bring myself to leave. Even obscured by evening shadow, my sailor heart beats on. Canoes no longer wait in the distance to receive my prayers for protection. I shout my desires into Earth's abyss and hope she hears me and hope she bothers to listen. The sea revels in resistance. She comes and goes just as she pleases, and perhaps it is for this reason we are friends. Bound to an indignant existence, contesting constraints of grainy shores, while washing away stubborn stones. I hear the cymbals clap with trepidation in the cool breeze of isolated coastlines. We string together gossamer wells wistfully through the tendrils of our exposed hearts. I hear the cymbals clap in the cool breeze of isolated coastlines, now with a fervor unseen before. But the sea and I, we have an understanding. I don't feel foreign in her waters or frightened by her power. I am inspired by her magnitude. It teaches me to know my own. So that is River's Girl, and take a little breath. And I will read Force of Nature now. And so the second poem is called Force of Nature. It's a little bit more revolutionary, I suppose. Okay. Force of Nature. I laugh in the face of men who grab at air and fail, falling flat beneath me. I am not a feminist. I am a revolutionary. I tip-tap waltzing, tiptoeing never, always gliding to the promised land, that which is free, above all things, and flowing with milk and honey into the soft curves of my breast, deep valleys that feed into a mystifying maze. My forefathers danced on a compound sprinkled with the blood of the colonizer and sang tribute to the sunken ships of comrades long gone. Because sometimes war means light, shining through the hurricane's eye. Because many times change means tears that evaporate from buoyant seas sitting untouched. And new beginnings and unlearning and erasing and starting all over and becoming light. Daisies sprout from the crown of my head because light is in my smile and the soft coil of my hair and the smell of coconut oil glistening under a sky the color of gold, illuminating all that I am and all that is in me, reminding the earth's soil that once upon a time we were one. Until I was formed within God's unique mold, shaped with gentle hands under the meticulous care of a benign potter's gaze, the maker of earth's clay. Curator of delicacies that stretch through mountainous heights and flow through treacherous ravines, collecting peacefully at an oasis end. Gazelles graze at the pastures of my hips. Powerful oaks rise from the depths of my womb. The melodies of leaves that whisper to me remind me that I am a force of nature. Thank you. So those are the two poems that I had for today. And I'd say that those two poems are really special to me because, as you can see, it just actually made me feel really powerful even reading them out loud. And I think that I really wanted this book in its entirety to be something that when the reader is reading it, they can internalize those words for themselves and be able to see that no matter where you come from, no matter who you are, no matter who society tells you you are, no matter what colonialism has told you you are, because when I say decolonization of the mind, body, and spirit, it really goes into that psyche. And I think the work of Steve Biko really taught me that how we think of ourselves and who we are, that concept of self, that is the most insidious type of control. When an external party can come and tell you to view yourself in a certain way, that is when you give away your deepest power. And so I just really want everyone to know that you are a force of nature. And then moving on to the next slide, I want to talk about how we can bring this energy into the workplace. It's not a lie, fintech, it's a male-dominated industry, but I think that what I love about Coupa is I'm able to see so many different types of voices levitated and brought to the forefront. And I think that a huge part of that and what that can look like in the future is divine feminine leadership. And so I made a little list of just different ways that we all can bring divine feminine energy into our professional interactions. And the first thing is emotional vulnerability. I think being able to come to work as your authentic self and be honest about when you need help, or be honest about what you're feeling, because it does affect your performance, but also beyond that, it affects how we're able to collaborate. And we talk a lot about community, shout out community AI, but I think that it ties to us being able to be vulnerable and feel comfortable in that. And then secondly, talking about being present. How many times do we work on autopilot, or how many times do we rush, or we're just thinking about next quarter, but what's happening now? What is happening now? What are you doing now? And being able to be very, not only authentic with that, but thoughtful, and to be able to take the time to receive. And that is what happens when you are present, because I receive my greatest inspiration when I'm just kind of sitting and allowing that to come to me. And thirdly, authentic self-expression, which also ties to unrestrained passion. And I think that I'm really blessed to be able to take something I'm super passionate about, writing and creating and inspiring people, and to be able to do that in my role. I think it's amazing. But there have been times when, I have had to really think about, how can I bring my authentic self? How can I bring the way that I think into this role? And how can I make sure that I'm not restraining my passion and my enthusiasm? Because that has been a thing. Earlier in my career, I think I had a manager tell me that I was too eager. And if I had internalized that, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. And so I think giving ourselves the permission to be passionate, to be excited, and to be enthusiastic it's a thing. And I think it helps. And also thoughtful communication. I think being self-aware ties into this, and having that self-awareness of how you are being received on the other end. This doesn't mean necessarily policing yourself or censoring yourself, but it means being thoughtful about the words that you use to communicate. And it means being intentional about the ways in which you relay your ideas to other people. I think working in marketing and then also having been in the creative arts my whole life, I've really always had to be very thoughtful about how I move, about how I speak. And it makes a huge difference when you are thoughtful versus when you're just saying things just for the sake of getting a point across. And intuitive reasoning. I think that a lot of leaders, one of my favorite leaders is Barack Obama, and I was reading his book, A Promised Land, and I think it was after he had like a failed, it was a really bad race, I think, for like the state Senate. When he decided to run for US Senate, it was a very, very intuitive decision. And everybody around him was like, are you sure? But he kind of like saw a vision in his head. And that's kind of how I make my decisions as well. I really, really do try to lean into my gut. I remember even before I went to Brown, I had a dream that I didn't get into like other schools, but I was here on this like grassy area. And if you've ever been to Brown's campus, there's a main green area. And I just remember like having this like really intense vision about that. And then that's where I ended up going. And I remember just kind of having that happen throughout my life. And then I realized, oh, that's my intuition speaking. And the more I've been able to honor that part of myself, the solar plexus chakra, my third eye, all of that, and be able to really take seriously what my body feels and what my body is telling me, as well as that spiritual and emotional data, which also is just as important as the physical data that we see in the 3D. Taking time to really listen to your intuition will allow you to be able to perceive things that maybe your eyes cannot see. And so I really think that we should all give ourselves space to lean into that more as leaders, not only in professional spaces, but also in our personal life. And then compassion. This is the biggest one. I've been reading, actually have it right here. I've been reading A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And this book is so phenomenal. And something that she says in here is when you are able, and I might be, kind of messing the quote up a little bit, but the essence of it is when you are able to see the face of God, you can see that in every single person you meet. And I grew up in a missionary church, and it was African missionaries going back to Africa to help other people. And I didn't see a lot of that in the South. And so I just remember being very deeply affected by like being around people who were dedicating their lives to going to areas where people just needed to receive love, and they needed to know that someone else could see God in them. And so that is my biggest thing, to kind of come into the world with compassion and empathy, and knowing that because I see the divine in me, I can see the divine in whoever else I am interacting with. And so those are the main things. And I want to read one last thing from my book, but to kind of wrap this up. But let me see. Okay. So the reason our souls find solace in the wilderness, the reason Jesus went to the mountain to pray, and the reason the land blesses us with food and nourishment when we harvest her with kind hands, is because when we truly pause to see ourselves as clay, beautifully molded with love by God, that is when we walk in our power. And when I stopped being ashamed and afraid of the visions, words, and artistry that God shared with me in my quiet time, my soul levitated. This is my love letter to who we are and all that we have the power to become. It is my hope that you will see your own truth reflected in my words. And I hope glimpses of my story will empower you to write your own and take your life by storm. I hope you find the courage to be open to love and its pitfalls, and to be open to learning from the stories of your elders, and even those who view the world through rosy lenses of youth. I pray you look in the mirror after reading this book or hearing it and recognize yourself for who you truly are. May your love for yourself blossom like sunflowers in a wild field, for they too look to the light for strength. And one last thing, may you never forget the immense force of nature you are. With love and light, Odemi Pessu. So that was part of my author's note, but I just wanted to kind of close out with that. And Felicity, we can go to the next slide. So thank you. If you are interested, and this is like my beat up annotated copy, but if you're interested in purchasing Force of Nature and supporting me as an artist, it is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Kobo. I think Kobo, that's more like, outside of America. But if you've enjoyed this talk, please reach out. Let me know what you liked, I don't know. Just, I would love to hear from you all. And I'm so thankful that I was able to do this. This has made me really, really happy. And if you want to get in touch with me, I have a website, I have a blog where I write, and also my photography is there as well. But if you want to reach out to me personally, you can reach out to me at odemipessu.com, or my Coupa email is there as well. And we still have a good chunk of time. If anyone has questions or comments or anything, I would love to hear. And that's it for me, Felicity.
All right. Thank you so much, Odemi. At this time, I will be stopping the presentation as well as the recording. So please bear with me while the little robot tells us we're ending.